Hey guys, believe it or not, I just got back from picking up yet another radio, and a fairly large console one at that. But it's got a few things going for it that kind of intrigued me, that's why I picked it up. For one, it's not a Philco like almost all my other radios. This is a Grunow, I think you pronounce it, G-R-U-N-O-W. It's also a very cool Art Deco design. I think it's from around 37 or 38. So it's got some interesting contrasting veneers, very rounded sides, and interesting speaker grill here with these dual pieces of wood, and then a grill cloth behind that. It's also a pretty decent radio. It's got 3 bands, AM broadcast band, and 2 shortwave bands. The tuning selector isn't working, I think, because the dial cord's broken. And I think this is the band switch and maybe power, and then I think this is volume. The knobs are loose because I actually I loosened up the set screw so I could pull the chassis out, so we can take a closer look at that. Oh, it also has an eye-tube. None of my radios actually officially have eye-tubes. I have one Tombstone radio that was modified to take an eye-tube, but this one is the only one I have that was actually designed to have an eye-tube up there. Here it is from the back. The chassis is actually in really good condition. No rust that I can see. It's got all of its tubes, and you know, it looks to be in pretty good shape, other than the tuning mechanism not turning. Somebody pretty clearly has replaced the line cord with just this modern white thin cord and put on some kind of crude antenna. I think the seller said it was working, but I'm certainly not going to plug it in and try turning it on before going over it. So it looks like it says, I guess those are initials, but I can't quite make it out. W-M-O, maybe, something like that. All-wave super heterodyne, chassis type 11G, 115 volts AC, and so on. Well, that's interesting. General Household Utilities Code, Chicago, USA. I had no idea that this actually might be associated with Chicago. Various notes written on here. I think it says 57M, maybe for 57 meters. And 527 Rutledge. That's not where I got it, but maybe that was the address where this radio resided at some point. There's tube layout. It's got a 5Z3 rectifier tube. That's new to me. I thought this was a Type 80 or a 5Y3 at first. I think this is rated for higher current. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. We got a 6K7, 6A8, another 6K7, yet another 6K7. And 6H6 for the detector, 6C5 for the audio driver, and a 6C5 for the phase inverter, because this does actually have push-pull outputs with 2 6F6s. Those are these 2 guys. Both Sylvanias look like matched tubes, so I hope they're still good. And one really good thing down here is one big old speaker. Got a huge field coil on this guy. It's really got a nice throw on it. And no tears, and it seems to be moving just fine. No scraping or anything. So, all that's the good stuff. Now here's for the very, very bad stuff. This was in a basement, or she said it was in a garage, but I bet it was in a basement, and this thing got wet. Really wet. Probably for a while, and it never got dried out right. So there is some major damage down here. For example, the speaker board plywood, that's separated like a good 2 inches here at the worst spot. But that's interior. I could replace that with a new piece of plywood. That's not a big deal. Also, part of the main frame of the cabinets come apart, but that could be glued, repaired, whatnot. That has actually affected the entire cabinet with this being broken off. You can see that up here it's separating too, so I think this entire side of the radio is breaking loose. So I definitely got to take care of that ASAP. And then you can see it's warped all the interior frame. Well, Unsurprisingly, that also affected the outside, but only at the very bottom. So even though on the inside it's bad all the way about a foot up, on the outside it doesn't really appear to be bad until 3 or 4 inches up. Most of the veneer is here, but it's really warped, really miserable. And because the underlying frame is warped, I can't just, that won't be as simple as just gluing this back down. I'm going to have to actually peel this off and then deal with the underlying substrate, the frame, and get that squared away. Like I was saying, this side's especially bad. You can see how the wood underneath the veneer is bowed out really badly. So I'm not quite sure to deal with that. Because that bottom trim piece is a really distinctive, important part of the radio, so I gotta restore that somehow. There's the eye tube mounting up there. So I guess I'll pull this chassis out and let's take a look underneath and see what kind of condition it's in. Only 2 of the 6 bolts that hold the chassis in place were actually present, and the 2 that were there were quite loose, so I had no trouble getting this out. I put a blanket down on top of the cabinet and have the chassis up here on its side so we can take a better look at it. Here's the connector for the eye tube. And here's the tuning mechanism. So there is a dial cord present, but this is not the usual stringing kind of string you see. This looks just more like a piece of yarn, actually. And there's no tension on it, so something's not right. There are things called dial stringing diagrams that will tell you how to wrap this cord around. I'll try to dig one up for this radio. So clearly there's a pulley up here. There's some kind of tensioning arm. And then there's a pulley on here. But for now I can just rotate these plates by hand. So here's the tuning dial. And it's kind of cool. The inner dial, or inner pointers I should say, span both sides. Then there's an outer one that rotates at a higher speed. I've seen some zeniths that use this kind of effect. Kind of neat, I think. There is a little bit of damage here in the dial face. Some of the black has been scuffed off. Not too bad though, and it's in a pretty unnoticeable area down here in the corner. This appears to be plain steel. In other words, it's not cadmium plated, but there's no rust. So whatever they treated this with really protected it well. It almost feels like it's got a clear coat on it, like a layer of lacquer or something. I don't think I've ever seen a chassis before this old with no corrosion whatsoever. I looked up the specs for a 5Z3 rectifier, and it does draw 3 amps, which is more than the 2 amps a 5Y3 calls, so I guess this can indeed handle more power. In fact, this might be the most powerful radio I've got, with the push-pull 6F6 output tubes and that big speaker down there. My Philco 3710 also has dual 6F6 output tubes, but the speaker is nowhere near as large as this guy. So I'll be quite interested to see how this sounds once I get it running. Now, as for the insides, it sure looks to me like it's 100% original. I don't see any signs of any repairs. There are 3 electrolytic cans. There's one up here, and you can see that the old borax or electrolyte is all oozed out the bottom, so that's definitely got to be replaced. It's completely shot. Same with this guy down here, and this one doesn't look too bad, but no point in taking chances. I'll replace that too. Especially because the wires going to this guy appear to be really fried, and so does this resistor. This has those nice old dog bone resistors that have painting on them to indicate the values, and this one, the whole center section's gone. It should all be green, and that's going to this capacitor terminal here, or maybe not. Maybe it just goes nearby. Well, regardless, Some of these wires seem to be really fried, and some seem to be in nice condition with the cloth insulation. So I imagine something burned out. Hopefully the power transformer is still good. Otherwise, just a handful of old wax paper caps to be replaced. And 3 electrolytic cans. And otherwise, I don't see any broken wiring, frayed wiring, or any burned out coils or anything like that. Here's a giant band switch with three coils for the 3 positions. Here's a little trimmer on the antenna inputs. I imagine you adjust that to optimize the antenna input circuitry. Or I should say one other trimmer here. Not quite sure what that's for. I think the documents for the 11G chassis are online. I'll ask around for that. Or check on Nostalgia Air. Oh, here's one cap that might be a replacement. This is a Mallory. Looks a little bit different than these other brown paper guys, but regardless, I'll just replace them all with what the schematic indicates is the correct value. Oh, there's a few modern resistors down there too. Clearly not dog bone. These look more like 40s or 50s type resistors. You know, carbon composition types. Well, there are a bunch of them. Maybe these were just coming out of the scene. Maybe these were available when this radio was made. Because there are quite a few of them now that I look around. Maybe in the lower wattages you could get this size. Still not quite sure what year this was made. It's definitely pre-World War II, but I'm gonna guess around 39, but I'm not positive. So if anybody out there has any info on Grunow with an 11G chassis, please leave me a comment and let me know what info you might have. Otherwise, I think I'll try to squeeze this in between some TV projects because I don't think this will be too much effort to get working, assuming nothing major is wrong with it. I guess that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video.